Hello, gang. How's it going? I got to do my sound check and visuals check. You guys can hear me okay? Sound good? And no hiccups? I'm doing good, gang. Super glad you're all here to join me. Okay, starting off, I got a question. Boombop, you're asking whether or not I'll get into perspective for Patreon. I've actually avoided it thus far, mostly because I try to make sure that my lessons will be things that are unique to how I approach them, or that I'm simplifying in a very specific way. So there's a logic to it. It's something that's like parceled well. That's basically what I do as a teacher. But with perspective, there's just so much content out there, and it's really just a matter of finding the book that you like. But I can cover it. The last episode I did briefly during one of the crits talk about wide angle and telephoto lens and the differences and how that affects perspective, if that would help. Um, but it's something I can consider. A few patrons have asked for it in the past, so yeah, we'll see. I'll have to sit down and really delve into it and dig into the the concept more so that I can actually condense it and distill it down so it's valuable for what I'm charging. Because, like I said, it's everywhere. Cool. But yeah, that's not a hard no. That's just how I think about these things. So anyway, you guys didn't see, but after I did my sketch for the last episode of the Twitch, I decided to do another sketch. And I had some fun. So I was drawing a character from that's like kind of a side character that I haven't even gotten to in my short story, I guess, serial story series, Granny Claymore. And it's this sort of benevolent harpy witch creature named Mother Crow, or Crow Mother. Um, so I started with this initial sketch right here. I got everything in that I knew that I wanted, sort of like a bird-like body, but also human and kind of upsetting. um, but she looked pretty mean and gruff, and she's meant to be creepy, but also kind of cute and friendly. So you can see I went in and changed the face a little bit in order to soften that up. So what we'll be doing today is I'll just be chatting and sketching. Oh, there's my censorship stars. I posted this on Instagram, and man, people were upset that there were stars. They wanted me to release the nips. I just thought it was funny. I'm not about censorship. Release the nipples. Okay. Yeah, and you guys, if you have questions or anything like that, lean in at any time. No pressure. You can just hang out and watch. I recently got a second monitor because I've been on a boat for the last several years. I've just been using a laptop, and I have this second monitor now, and I'm not used, like, it's kind of crazy to get used to it again. I mean, the real estate is vitally important for what we're doing here, but it's odd when I do things like right click. I have to right click on the left side of the canvas in order to see my brushes. Otherwise, it pops into the other screen. It's little things, little annoyances. I still have the boat, Boom Bop. It's in Mazatlan right now. Obviously, I can't go there or anything. I think the borders are closed for the moment. So, yeah, it's not out of the question that I'll keep the boat and do more exploring. I do think I might be done with full time cruising because the inconveniences in regards to work were pretty significant. It was cool because I was in perpetual summer, like it was summer vacation all the time. But That was also the problem with it. I like working. I like doing stuff like this. That was one of the things is I just couldn't be available. Um, Now I'll be able to do things like do signings for Magic card fans and things like that. I'll be able to just be part of the community more. But the boat's there, and I think I'll probably end up doing in the long run sort of a snowbird situation where I work half the year in the States and then go down for several months and get into trouble on the beach with booze and bikinis. Meaning I'll be wearing the bikinis. Um, so with this sketch, I didn't really get into that too much, but when I do a sketch for characters in particular, but just in general, I try to get a full. You said it looks like the painting is off to a great start. That's on purpose. I think it was Sargent had a sort of approach where he taught his students that if your painting doesn't read at a distance in the first 30 minutes, you're doing it too slow. You need to make big bold decisions fast, and I'm all in on that camp. Make the big bold decisions as fast as you can, and then the rest is just gravy. Yeah, boat life was great. I do recommend it. I think just in general it would be it's it's a good idea to not take life as seriously as we've been taught to, and just try and adventure a little bit more. Everything will work out. I'm just noodling, but what I'm going to be doing is I've been experimenting lately with using gradient map for doing sort of a recolor painting effect. I'm thinking about doing that, but also those like big. Now that I'm thinking about it, those big layer effect. What do they call these? Layer styles or whatever. Whatever this thing is down here. Those layer alterations or modifier layers can get real GPU heavy, and I'm running some GPU heavy stuff already with the stream. Maybe I might have to just do this traditional. Hey, no worries. We'll catch you next time. Thanks for stopping in and asking cool questions. So, as I was saying, I'll continue doing kind of like a almost black and white or a monochromatic render with her. I'll take it probably to 70%, and then I'll decide then, because you know it'll be at that point if I crash out the stream, I'll have enough content in that for maybe a YouTube video out of it too. Ideally, I don't crash, but we are operating on my old ass laptop. The new tower I'm building, the components are coming in piece by piece. I'm excited about that. I got the case, I got the fan, I got the primary drive, and the RAM. Oh, the RAM is so juicy. It's gonna be a beast. When I'm doing hands and stuff like this, you should check out my hand tutorials, where I talk about gesture and things like that, and how to kind of quickly indicate things. But essentially, the philosophy I have is just to, especially when painting, because we're not drawing, just get the shapes down, get the feel right, and then you can render it later. It usually works out. Reference is key, but I am being a total moot, and I'm not paying attention to any reference. I'm just winging it. There's a point. You know what? Actually, I'm going to save this. Let's see. No, I already seen. I will group these. Oop. Usually around this point when I have God damn it. You know what? I'm going to ungroup these now. I start condensing layers because most of the stuff is done. This way I can easily edit things that are on the same plane. Yeah, I've ordered another monitor too. So I have the two monitors will be for my primary tower, and my laptop will probably be quasi-retired at that point. I'll be bringing it with me to Mexico when I go back for short visits. But yeah, two monitors are everything. The other one's a beast. It's gigantic. It's not even the same format as this, so I'm not even sure I'm gonna have to figure out how to stream at that point. An easy thing to do once you've merged all your stuff, like I've done just there, is to go in and just soften everything to try and get rid of some of that line work if you don't want it. I'll let her stay fairly rough, but I'll have to find a music solution or something like that for when I'm streaming, because I imagine it's fairly quiet for you guys. I'm listening to music, but well, maybe you are too. I kind of want to add an interesting kind of sag pit shape here for the skin and flesh. Yeah. As a teacher, I can tell you, I've had lots of students, uh, do nudes and quasi-erotic lewds for assignments and things like that. I don't mind. It's pretty great. But it's always funny seeing how much time is spent rendering on the boobs. So I'm doing that also. Yeah. I wasn't sure how I wanted to handle this neck. I can tell I was kind of waffling on it. I think keeping that bird shape is going to be a big part of this. I definitely, so for Granny Claymore, for those of you that haven't read any of the story or know any of the background with it, it's a high fantasy serial about a barbarian like Red Sonja. Basically, it's what would happen if Red Sonja got so old that she retired. And Granny Claymore is this ancient barbarian. She's an utter badass, but just sick of the adventure high fantasy lifestyle. And the premise of the story is just to follow along on her adventures and see how she tries to avoid it but keeps getting caught up in shenanigans. But the aesthetic that I've got going is very much that old school high fantasy, like Legend, major influences. Legend, Willow, of course, and Conan and Red Sonja. So I'm just trying. It's like my paying homage to a genre that I really love. So I want to do a take on a harpy that is. It's in that kind of almost campy vein, but also cool and relatively fresh. But a lot of the creatures and characters that I've dreamed up for this story, I like to think of them in terms of like the kind of prosthetics that would be available in the 80s. So when I'm designing them, I'm very much thinking about like how would this work if Jim Henson's team was on it? Have you guys seen any fantasies lately that kind of touch in that same vein? I'm trying to think of current ones that are like just slightly campy, but still earnest and good. It's that earnestness, I think, that really makes some of those older films feel, I don't know, so homey to me. I think I'm gonna kind of imply this diamond head shape to her skull. So there's almost a snake-like aspect to it too. Um, Weirdly, I haven't even really been thinking about light. I'm doing kind of a, I'm being bad. I'm just doing a render pass where the light's ultra basic. So I should sit and think about this, because this scene is, I don't know, maybe she's kind of like coming out of her hovel. Um, I don't feel like doing a full environment piece, so you can see I've kind of hinted at it in the background with a really soft brush. I don't want to dig into that too much. I think this is going to be more of a character piece. Excuse me. Think about that. Got to do something though. You can't just leave it black. Just nothing. I will, let's see. I'm going to keep the background cool and I'm going to keep her warm, but I'm still trying to keep it relatively monochromatic. It's not about color yet. If you're not a patron, you should check out some of my videos on brush management. I've got some interesting color variation uh, brushes you can pick up, and it's all about just hinting. It's weird. It create just that little bit can create a lot of visual noise that kind of makes it more visually appealing. Gonna give her a little. I'm definitely thinking more idyllic style fantasy too. It doesn't necessarily need to be. In fact, I make a pretty big point of not making everything in Granny Claymore like anglicized, but in sort of like that traditional sword and sorcery fantasy way. I definitely want like to push other culture stuff, and you may not. I mean, the stories I haven't worked on them in a while, but the stories are there's not a ton of them, so I haven't been able to get into all of the world building that I've actually done on the back end. But the cultures are very varied, very varied. Ah, I'm a nerd. I'm not interested in sharp edges right now for the background. I'll suss it out later. All right. So I think one of the ways when you're dealing with creepy and horror, especially the way I approach it, it's really about contrasts and about um, playing with expectations. And when you see a monster or creature like this, seeing her, in like a dark alleyway or like hiding between, in the shadows of rocks would make a lot of sense. Especially, if you were to do a reveal of a creature like this and it was meant to be how I'm doing it. She's beneficent. She's a kind creature, actually. She's just really scary looking. Um, I would reveal her in a way that plays on on what she looks like. But because we can't do that, this isn't a sequential story or a comic or a movie. I'm going to play those contrasts in the single moment, and the contrasts will be the horror of her form, but then I'm going to do idyllic lighting. So I'm thinking like a nice, pretty, you know, spring morning or something like that. And I've already kind of got the color basis for this. Um, so it's starting off in the right direction. Kind of an overhead. I've got a light source that's kind of coming from our side of the picture plane and hitting her. I don't think this is one for drama, like a strong rim light or something like that. That would be a little bit more horror-y. I guess the reason I'm talking about this is in class lately, we our lessons have been about narrative lighting, so I've been thinking about that a lot lately. If everybody in here is from class, well, you know that already. One of the ways that you can take a monster and give them, damn stupid second monitor, and give them a feeling of intellect is to think about costuming. Because things with intelligence, things that have self-perception, things that understand the mirror, right, are more inclined to decorate themselves. That's not an absolute. It's a fun rule to live by. So I think Mother Crow will have some decorations. I'd like to pull from cultural stuff, but I don't want to pull up Google because I have no idea how the rights things work with that. The last Twitch I did, I finished it out and I accidentally pulled the plugs on my headphones and the microphone picked up like really lightly a little bit of the Spotify music I was listening to, and I mean you could barely hear it. Boom! As soon as I put that thing on YouTube, I got a cease and desist. It's crazy fast. I can't decide if the whole neck should be feathers, feather hair or whatever, or if I should let it be meaty. I'm afraid there's a little too much penis in it, so I kind of want to take that out a little. Normally I support such a thing, but it doesn't quite fit the character. Are you all painting now too? Doing different stuff? Oh, that's not from her. Is it? Oh, it is. Alright, so I've kept my values pretty tight. We're going to make it black and white. You can see my darkest dark is, shit, 30, 40%. Yeah. Almost 50. So it's very mid to high key. I think I'm going to punch it into the lights and leave it mid in order to keep that idyllic feel. But I do want to add some cools on her because she's just super ruddy. And the thing, you know, with simultaneous contrast, I don't really need to put blues on her to make it cool. I just need to desaturate what's there. Nice. Good show, Josh. Ooh, too cool. I'm gonna merge this down. Come on now. There we go. Lock some pixels. I'm just gonna kind of by bringing in temperature shifts, I find you can create some good visual noise and vibration in the image. Oh, too much. I forgot that I already painted this relatively opaque. I want her face to stand out. Contrast, baby. Yeah, this is the problem when sometimes you have transparencies in a layer with a figure. I'm gonna have to do a cleanup pass here since we're gonna take this further and actually render it out. So just selecting out all of the things to create a hard edge cutout. It's a double-edged sword because I'm going to lose all of the fun textural brush strokey stuff, but at the same time I will be getting something solid that I can't paint behind and make pixels visible. Also, I'll be able to paint in the pixels only with pixel lock. So it's a fair trade-off. Also, I find that's just something that happens when you're doing a painting. The tighter you get into the sketch, the less life it has, the less it just gets stiffer over time. So you're trading that vibrancy and life for render and clarity of form. It happens. Life is about compromise. There are other ways to select that Photoshop is really great about, like Magic Wand and the quick selection tool. But man, they're terrible with sketches. It's never worth it. It's just better to do it this way, even though you end up with it a little overly crisp. One thing I do try to practice when I'm doing this, in order to manage a little bit of that stiffness that comes from cleaning up the lines so much, is to almost draw with the lasso tool. So you'll find that I make cuts that don't that are not in the drawing but are just more, little details, little contours, and those are to try and make up for the loss of the cute little scritchies of the drawing itself. A lot of the characters that I've come up with for this story are, because I haven't written it all out, they're just like little vignettes in my head, little moments, jokes, and things like that. So I don't even really know where Mother Crow fits into the story yet. I just know that she's going to be a great addition. I definitely write that way. I'll write in vignettes, cool moments. That's how Collar went, especially with the pilot that I wrote. It was just vignettes at first, and then I started to join them together into this bigger cohesive thing, and then the theme kind of just came out of that. It was pretty cool. It was very holistic. I'm always tempted to flip with, because I flip constantly when I'm painting. I'm sure you've noticed, and it's made some of you sick, but you can't flip when you're doing your selection. You flip and you lose the selection. The way around that is to make a new layer and then fill the selection with a solid color, and then do your flip and select from that layer. It's a workaround. I've done it before, but my laziness, profound. I think I'll let her chin hairs go for now because they'll be so easy to indicate later. A lot of those delicate lines in the sketch, they're not going into the selection because it's too, it'll be too messy. I could never get that effect at all with a selection tool. So I don't even bother with little tiny details like that. With hair specifically, if it's a contour, yeah, I'll go out of my way. Like if she's got wrinkles, in her neck or something like that, I will include those, but not hair. That's, yeah, it's funny that I do include the one detail. I guess it's just that they're easier to do. Trying to trace out a hair with a lasso tool just sounds like a nightmare. It's so much easier to just redraw it. I am drawing here. I know that I'm missing her second knuckle, so I'm just drawing it in now with the lasso tool. I won't see it until I do the new layer and fill, but this is a common way that I handle this sort of thing. Her cane. I'm not sold on the cane. It's kind of boring. I'm going to have to do something with that, but it's just a good placeholder for now. Might end up being bone or something else. I don't know. It's just a spinal column. Yeah, that's what that'll be, I think. A spinal column. But she's nice. You can trust her. She'll help the main characters. Yeah, she walks around on somebody else's spinal column. But there's lots of examples of that in reality. Perfectly nice people with collections of human bones. Doing these little taco cuts, sometimes it can be easy to do a rhythm of shapes too much. And I definitely, for the feathers, I feel like it's a little bit, that's understandable. But I'll still try and sharpen some and soften others. But when it comes to cloth, you can't do the same shape again and again. The same widths. She's going to have such awesome feet. I think I got most of it. I'm not sure about this negative space back here. I might either cut in a deep, deep sway back. Um, I'm not sure. I don't like that sort of nonsensical shape back there very much. So, copy merged, paste, and now we got Mother Crow. I think, what do I do for that shadow? I'll just copy it. Laziness, every time. All right, put this up in the archive folder. Have a sip of coffee, think about things, consider life. Save, always be saving. Nope. That's better. I need to change the rolls, how they're folding up here at the top. But I think that kind of gumdroppy shape is a nice... It's a nice feeling thing. It's like, it feels more friendly to me. And I have 3 times now bricked up this rump and given it some tude, and it's just not enough. She needs... I gotta brick it hard. There we go. Let's see how this feels. Yeah, it's better. It's still not quite there. Girl works at the club. Yeah. Right now, I'm looking at the navigator panel right here, and it's giving me... it's an easy way to kind of get a big shape read without having to squint. One of the things I'm trying to train myself with, I picked up squinting in school. You know, they teach you that for simplification, but man, I am super guilty of doing it on my own artwork, and you can't squint at your work. It just makes it look nicer when you're squinting. I think we're going to have to implement the knee and the breasts here. It's too good not to hit that. He's already overwrought. A lot of times when I do quick creature sketches like this, instead of pulling up a reference that sits on the screen, what I'll do is sort of like a reference. What would be the equivalent for that? Like a reference beautiful mind moment, where I'll just like zoom through a bunch, dozens and dozens of pages of search responses on Google, and just flash them all before my face, just to get quick ideas and not overthink anything too much or get too committed to one thing. And man, my search history on this one is going to be pretty great. The things these eyes have seen. Although I imagine that's true for all of us. Like at some point, if you're doing this for a living, you start stumbling across stuff that other people wish they had never seen, and it just kind of gets, well, that's new. You get jaded and no longer affected by it, like an ambulance driver. I guess there's no such thing as an ambulance driver. It's got to be like an EMT. So, like an EMT. So this is what I was talking about, how the folds weren't working. If that mass is narrower there, I need the back meats to kind of come around better. All right, let's get some cools in. I'm just doing color mixing on the canvas. It's funny the things you take for granted when you're painting digitally, man. Trying to do that on traditional media is much more difficult, depending on the media. I will need to look up a pattern because I think this should definitely be like a skirt. But what I'll do, I'll save that for later. But what I will do is make the cuts of it to make it clearer that this is a item of clothing. And that means layering, extruding shapes, wrinkle passes. Okay, I think I've done pretty fair amount of rendering on her. And I really got to figure out what my lighting is. Let's see. First things first. I should have done this with the background to figure out a better composition early on. But like I said, this isn't really a composition piece. It's a character design. You can do both at the same time. It's just extra work. I think there needs to be enough background with the character design, unless it's, like they just need just a creature or whatever real fast, client wise. I like to include some hint of an environment. I find it helps with the storytelling and narrative. This is the Touching Your Face channel, by the way. And then apply a cast shadow from the trees. Mush it down a little bit. I'm gonna leave it kind of watercolory in the back. Just kind of meh. We'll come back to it later, I'm sure. Knowing me. Okay. going to soften the details out of this shadow pass, just in case I end up doing transforming or something like that. Definitely decision time. Hey, Dan Rob, welcome. Um, I'm. I generally do well. I mean, this is my second one generally, but I've been aiming for. My idea is to do 1.5 to 2 hours every Wednesday, and depending on response, we'll see. We'll go from there. And welcome. All right. So remember those little bits that I carved in and gave extra. So gave extra pixels to in order to draw in. What I'll do is I'll make a new layer, clip it to that first one, and just double check to see where those little poke outs are by picking a dark value. You never want outlines, light or dark, I think. Or if you want them, you have to purposefully do them. Don't just leave them hanging. These little bits, they end up looking like artifacts in the long run, and I don't think it looks very good. So that is that layer. Creating undue contrasts in weird places, it's going to draw the eye, and people will wonder what it is. Admittedly, we couldn't see that little bit of texture before because her chin hairs were in the way, and they're gone now. But we will be bringing them back. So she's a nice harpy, but she's still a harpy. So she'll have some little bit of deer blood or something on her face. Hi, welcome. Um, when you're doing the when you're doing a smudge brush technique like I'm doing right now, it can be very easy to get into render town a little too fast, and there's definitely some rendering going on in this, but I don't want to lose that chunkiness and the vibrancy of a sketch and strokes. Things like these little hatches and such like that. There's always a time and a place for the smudge, but it's not everywhere. Excuse please. Uh-oh, I picked up an accent value. Now I gotta commit. And it happens. I think now that I've done that. Yeah, I think I'll keep this lighting and then just do a cool fill I originally had a pointed ear, kind of an elfy thing, but I think having a little roundy one kind of makes her seem more, I don't know, softer. And you'll notice by adding an accent value and then following that accent value throughout the image that it's gonna have a more finished quality. Again, I'm trying to keep the same value key that I've established for the figure. I don't want to break out of the key. I want to keep, this may change, it's all subject to change, but right now my goal is to keep her in this mid-tone value range. So I'm just using the accent values to just add little carve-ins, little bits of ambient occlusion that help describe the form a little bit more and give the viewer a tertiary read. So she's got to have almost kind of a storybook. I think that's the earnestness that I was talking about. The things that I like, the fantasies that inspired Granny Claymore, is that there is this sweet earnestness. Like even the monsters have kind of a, I don't know, just a cuteness, a storybook fairy tale quality. Like I'm thinking right now of the trolls in Willow, right? The trolls are hideous monsters. It's just a guy in an ape suit with a little bit of practical face makeup on, but there's almost still kind of a cuteness to them. That's something I'm definitely trying to bring into this. Base animation, you're struggling with values. Oh yeah, values are tough. They're building blocks, so you can't fuck around with them, really. What is it you're struggling with in regard to your values? My very first lessons on Gumroad focus on values in particular pretty heavily because they are building block stuff. Really, what it'll come down to is just making sure that you understand keys. The value key is going to be, and the value key and how the value key terraces throughout your image, from the value key of the overall image to the value key of parts of the image and so on and so forth. Managing your values, just like managing your palette, vital. Oh, then if you're afraid of working in darks, then you've got to work in the darks. It's exposure treatment. You just gotta get into it. Get dirty. Stuff feels boring because you're fearing adding form and drama. How would I handle that? I think the question isn't gonna be how do you get form or drama from the values. It's gonna be what is it that's keeping you from trying. What is it that's got you locked into using values the way you're using them? I mean, when we're talking about doing this kind of thing right here, painting out of your head or just painting for fun, it should be the freest thing in the world. So sitting back and thinking about what it is, like, are you trying to do perfect job every time? Are you sort of fixating yourself into writer's block, effectively, painter's block? That's the question. So I'm trying to give a facial expression here, but I really want to avoid being just outright scary or mean looking. I still want her to have this kind of sweet, matronly feel, because she is good. And all the while, I'm still thinking practical masks, practical effects. You know, it for me that's what lends it some reality. It's just like practical effects do for film. There's this reality that's lent by just the thing in that space, and I feel like you can grab onto that a little bit with your creature and character designs by ensuring that there's a feeling that this thing would work as a costume. This thing would work on a person, on a rig, you know. Oh, sorry, I didn't know you were on the Patreon base animation. It's that you guys all have different names on here, and then also on Patreon, I don't know most people's names because everybody's using usernames. Okay, yeah, the perfection is the problem. That's what's freezing you. Well, I guess the way I would look at it for myself, the way I did look at it for myself, because I had very similar issues, was that I had to realize that me thinking that it had to be perfect, you know, that my work needed to be perfect in order to be done or in order to, uh, satisfy the, I don't know, whatever it was I was trying to make, um, for me felt ultimately narcissistic. So once I started looking at it from the viewpoint of Izzy, you're trying to do something perfect, like coming at it from that perspective is narcissism. Do you want to be narcissistic about it? Now, obviously, that's not necessarily the case, but by by changing my frame of reference for how I was approaching it, kind of freed me of that feeling like, oh, okay, I don't need to be so precious about this because I'm learning, or this is a piece that's just going to be this. Like, if you take what the piece means for you when you're working on it and bring that down to a manageable level, you might have a better time with just getting the bowels loosened creatively. A lot of what comes with block is perception about what you think you should be doing. And instead, if you can turn it into a game, if you can turn it into something silly, um, and try to make it fun rather than a job, even when it is a job, if you can make it fun, you remove some of that pressure that we all put on ourselves to perform. Yeah, I hope that helps. It's one of those things. It's easy to say it's easy when you're on the other side of that. But I understand it. I do understand how it feels. It's hard. I have similar issues with the writing, and when I write, I put a shitload of pressure on myself. I have a pretty hard rule about when we're working, we do kind of comparative stuff. Like some people compare themselves with their previous work, some people compare themselves with their peers. I compare everything that I do with the top of whatever that thing is. So when I'm writing, I'm comparing it with Stephen King. I'm comparing it with Neil Gaiman, and always finding it wanting. And that can be completely freezing, where I can't do anything. So I have to constantly remind myself. But because I've already done that, I've already played this game with artwork, through schooling and things like that. It's a bit easier for me now to kind of step back and go, oh, I'm doing it again. Time to relax, have some fun. You feel afraid that it's been an ego problem, and oh man, 3 years since a creative bowel movement. My friend, it's time for some creative fiber. Uh, yeah, it's tough to consider that it is potentially ego, but honestly, that's from my experience, from my own stuff. That's almost always what it comes down to is ego. And if I can let it go, like, hey, I mean, even let me give you a very poignant and timely example. Twitch. I put off doing this for ages because of exactly the same thing. I was concerned that uh, I would never be as good as all these other artists and all these other content makers. I would be, I don't have the tools, I don't have the right equipment, I don't have this, I don't have that, and I did sit back and ask a lot of people, a lot of other people that have been doing it for a while. I put in the time to try and learn what I could, but I kept putting it off because I was concerned that I couldn't do something that great, and that if I was doing it, it would have to be great, have to be. And I had to have a little sit down with myself, discuss that ego issue I was having there. Just get going. It doesn't matter. Everybody fucks up. I'm sure I'll have problems as I go through this. There's another angle for that, actually. Not to belabor the point. But this is another thing that really kind of sits at home for me. So, um, I've living on the boat as I was. I met a lot of different people, and I would hear a lot of interesting stories. I mean, that's kind of half the reason I did the thing, was just for the crazy stories. Um, but this is a story that you're going to hear a lot at this stage in life for a lot of people that are doing something like retiring onto a boat or going on their grand adventure. And that is, they spent their whole life working really hard. They did it by the book. They did it by the numbers, gathering the money, white picket fence, family, job, pension, all that shit. And then, so they finally get that time to do the thing that they always wanted to do and go and be free, go be on a sailboat, go sail the seven seas, explore, adventure, mai tais on the beach. They buy the boat, they're down there working on the boat, and have a heart attack in the sun. That that happens with frequency enough that it's almost a legend amongst boaters. And the way I approached thinking about that, or the way I approach thinking about what we're talking about, is thinking about it from that perspective. You have a limited amount of time on this planet, and we all do. What do you want to do with that time? And if you really want to express yourself in a creative way, what are you waiting for? No one else is going to make it for you. 70, 80 years if you're lucky, that's not very much time. Just go make stuff. And don't be precious about it. Just get it out there. Accept the mortality of it, because there is no such thing as perfect. There really isn't. And there is such thing as finite time. So it's your choice how to spend it. It's a tough one, and it's brutal, but it's the truth. That's how I ended up writing Collar. It's how I ended up writing Maggot. It was... These aren't going to be perfect. They're not going to be... I'm not going to ever get paid for them. It's just something I need to get done. I will try someday to publish something, but I did write. It was hard. It was a lot of work, but I did it. Anyway, I hope that helps. Enough preaching from me. Alright, I'm going to use a lasso tool here because I don't like how this knee is coming out, and I'm just going to make a bold decision and see how it works out. I really like the undulation and color here that's happening. So I think I'm going to keep pushing that, like throwing in these rando greens and teals and things like that. I think that's it's an interesting style that's kind of popular right now, and I like it. It's not something I do much. So why not today? Sometimes Spotify just gives me the weirdest ass songs. I don't know if that happens to you guys. It's like, what the hell? I'm implying just with quick strokes some ambient occlusion just to weight her on the ground. That's something I see a lot with students. They kind of forget that you need to throw in some contact points where the light cannot gather and the shadows pool. I always liked that term, pooling of shadows. Shadow pool. So cool. I love these arm flaps. This is all still just the accent value pass. It's not fully shading. It's more like it's almost drawing. I'm just finding places where that ambient occlusion is much more absolute and accenting it. It's a cool effect to take your accent value and only pinch it into places where there are two shadows combining. Well, the shadows technically can't really combine like that unless there's multiple light sources, but that's the ambient occlusion where where the light is not bouncing around in there, so the shadows are gathering a little bit more. And if you, by just kind of hinting at those little rollovers, it gives it depth. They're little like lost and found like dots, little connect the dot points. It's a fun. It totally works. It's a fun little trick. Dot. See, I have a crease, and the crease is meeting something else. Dot, dot. Right? Dot right there. Yeah? It's cheesy, but it works. I want to get some other colors up in here. New layer. Anytime I experiment with a new color or a new direction, something wild grabs me. New layer. You never know if you totally want to erase a thing. I'm going to use that value to imply that this little tassel set is continuing. And they're not, these aren't even the same colors, but they are the same values. And by carving out the shadow side of that, I'm able to fake the effect that that color is continuing and that those tassels are continuing. And what that does is that's more of that lost and found stuff. So it's an easy way to create visual interest because you're expecting to see that kind of color there. It's more classic painting and illustration trickies. Very tricky. You got to get the light on this tuchus. Yes. I maintain I like those greens, that striation, so I'm going to implement it elsewhere. Oop. Let's take a minute, let's assess, lean back. We're definitely keeping the storybooky feel so far, gang, because it doesn't have that strong, it doesn't have strong deep shadows. That mid-tone stuff makes it feel more airy, and those little accent values are helping to describe the form without having to break the value key. So this is a base. This is a good way you can start introducing darker values into your paintings, is to focus more on the drawing aspect and do accent values. I think I'm going to have to focus a little bit on these feathers and tighten them up a little bit, but for that I'm going to do another merge pass. Come on now. I have a Bluetooth keyboard and sometimes it takes a second to wake up. It's not keeping up with me so good. Alright, so I want to continue the accent value thing, but I want to do it in a broader sense. I don't want to be doing just line work. So I'm using a bigger brush and kind of testing to see if I can get away with doing almost kind of a wash. As I'm working it up against my light source so that I don't end up with darks in the light and they feel inconsistent. So that bit I did on the hair, that might have been too much, but it's separating her from the background a little bit. And I've rendered her so much I can't leave the background anymore. God damn it. Damn it! I avoided it for so long. So when I'm doing backgrounds, usually I don't let the figure get this far because then the disconnect can be huge. I tend to try and do the backgrounds way before, like back when she was looking, I'd say about when I started, that's as far as I would go with a figure before getting into the background, because you can get so lost in that. And then the background just completely falls apart. So now I gotta actually sit in there. And I really have to do a proper background now because she is crazy more detailed than I ever expected to go. I'm using a big juicy brush because I don't want to get totally lost back here. I, like every other person that does this stuff, am a render monkey, and I get all caught up in making everything look right. The art of it really is just to paint what is necessary and nothing more. Easier said than done. This is the other part. You got to be careful that you don't end up painting stuff that's not going to be seen or putting too much effort into that. If it's never seen, you're really wasting energy and time. Especially if this is like a client piece. Oh, no, no, no. So I can't continue with just the soft watercoloriness of the background. I'm going to have to start actually figuring out that light direction and applying it to the background too. Should probably be using a bigger brush. Should always try to use the biggest brush. A brush just too big to do the job you're trying to do. What this does is it forces you to simplify your strokes and capture the overall feel, the essence of that thing you're trying to render. You can always go in and detail it later, but you'll be amazed what you can describe with a big brush. This chat window constantly saying welcome to the chat room is really distracting. I'll have to figure out how to turn that off. There's so much I have to learn about this whole thing. New layer. Light's coming from this side, so I'm gonna do, you know what? We're gonna cheat because it's fun to cheat. A nice light color. At this point, I'm just sketching in ideas. I'm not, this is basically just drawing. I'm not painting right now. I go back and forth between the two, sometimes on a single layer. Having the smudge brush really allows you to cheat like crazy. Just smudge out the lines from the door. This is hilarious. I made a door that my monster can't fit through. I'm a professional, folks. Just getting shapes in. I'm not sure what I'm doing with these things. Just trying to think of other ways to break up the form. Got a question? Take it easy, Josh. It's good having you on, bud. Getting back out there with your portfolio. I think it's just about organizing it. Like a lot of the work that I have for my portfolio online, if you're asking about mine specifically, it's just dated. I gotta get some new stuff in there. So that's what this kind of thing is for. 2 birds or harpies, 1 stone. As for tailoring, I'm not really trying to tailor for a specific, I don't know, specific company or anything right now. I just need to get content out, so I have something varied. This is the background is getting pretty dark. That's okay because I'm going to be carving the lights back out of it again. I'm almost using it as like a tone or toning the canvas kind of deal. But I'm still trying to just focus on that. I'm going to merge all that down into the background just to try and minimize GPU usage. I'm always worried that the stream is just going to drop out. Yeah, the work question's a good one. I think, man, it really depends because work is going to change so much in the coming months and years. I'm not even sure really how the portfolio would play out in that. All right, I'm going to do a quick draw pass, which will be that kind of ambient occlusion. And because I was loose, I'm just going to use kind of the textures and details that come up or came through from the sketch phase. And I'm just going to accentuate them, and that's it. I'm not trying to do a full background right now. This perspective is completely off, of course. This is another reason why I'm very hesitant to teach perspective. I am a big proponent of guesspective. But to be fair, good guessing will generally come from at least a bare bones knowledge of how it should work. Another thing, my visual vocabulary for plants is not great. It's a good thing to have reference, but like I said, I'm not going to fuck with Google until I know how the rules work for streaming. Gonna get some flagstone. This kind of thing, these little ground details and the perspective of them can help out with scale a lot too. So I'm hoping I can kind of get her into more reasonable human proportions. Right now she's a little bit big. I don't know, maybe that'll work. We'll see. We'll see. The spine cane will definitely define some of that for us. I'm being soft with the rocks back here because I want to imply when you're soft with edges on details like this, and you apply tighter details on top of that transition like I'm doing right now, it gives the illusion that there's more of that detail, even though there isn't. And it's a great way to quickly kind of get grass, crowds. You can do it with crowds. Anything that there's like, it's multitudinous. That's the word I'm looking for. And then just carving out like details on top can really get that effect working for you. And you want to make sure that you do it both ways. Lights over dark and darks over lights. And you want to be sparse. If you do it too much, it can look real campy. Got to make sure that the lights are behaving. Everything's still kind of gray back here. So we're getting rid of color. And we can see back here behind her, all the values are mushing together. And they're in the same vein as her values. And that's a no-go. It's gonna create visual confusion. So admittedly, I'm not done with her at all. That spine thing's the spine cane is gonna definitely need some darks and some lights in order to help pop. But you gotta constantly be thinking about that. All that overlap has to make sense. So I'm just softly going in and creating moments of light and dark overlap. All of the plant details that I have in my head are coming from Animal Crossing. Oh, too much Animal Crossing for Izzy. I'm actually I'm reaching my threshold for it. I'm getting a little tired of it. It feels like work now. I don't know if you guys are playing that at all. The only person on the planet not playing Animal Crossing? Yeah, might be. I don't know. It was really fun for a time there. I'm definitely kind of getting over it though. I never would have thought that I would have liked the game. I was surprised that I enjoyed it as much as I did. That's very much not. I am not a farming sim. What do they call those games where like you basically just wait for stuff? You know, you have to set something into motion and then wait for 4 days or 2 days or whatever. That sort of thing usually annoys the shit out of me. But for some reason this time it totally grabbed me. So I'm getting good dark shapes back here, but I really want to pull lights without making it muddy or spotty with the values on the foreground figure. It's a tough one because she's not done, so you got to be careful about making major decisions like that. You're playing Pokemon Sword? Nice. I didn't pick it up. I bought the last Pokemon I bought was Sun, and I think it was Sun, and I put maybe 4 hours into it and walked away because I'm traditionally like a hard out Pokemon head, but man, I don't know what happened. Either I completely aged out of the demographic, or something about the game is different, and I didn't enjoy it as much. I did play the ones before that though on the 3DS, like crazy cakes. Yeah, they weren't good, right? I mean, well, relatively speaking, they're still Pokemon games, but I did not I did not like Sun and Moon. I was there from the beginning, way back in the day. My Game Boy Advance. I think I'm going to go back to my color variation brush just to kind of... I find that it works well for architectural details like brick. It just hints at it, that variety. Damn it! It hints at that variety better. The way I've set these up is these three are color variants bricks, so every tip is a different color, and they become less saturated, I think, the further up you go. Yeah. So the first one is very excuse me, the saturation difference is pretty high when you have a color selected. It works pretty well. You can definitely see this technique in some of my magic cards. What the hell is that? Some big dink. Oh, it's my phone. I forgot I'm connected to my phone. Ah, so smart, this guy. I really hadn't planned out the background, and it's totally showing, which is frustrating me. But I did this to myself, so I'm gonna pay the piper. If you're gonna include something in an illustration or in a concept, have reasons for it, have a plan. Otherwise, this will happen to you. Definitely thought I was going to be able to half-ass that, and it's not working. I'm hinting at these things even though we don't see them, because this can happen where you end up with elements in your painting and they're not making sense. So you have to go into the parts that you can't see and make them make sense. It takes time, but the payoff is worth it. It's just a lesson that I've learned the hard way many, many, many times. So I got to figure out my perspective, figure out what the hell I'm doing with this door. Kind of had a rough perspective idea like this. It's kind of meant to be not medievally, but can hint at it. And the wood structures, maybe that would help. Even though, again, you're not going to see any of this stuff, but it's going to inform other details. Nope, that didn't work. All wood maybe at the bottom. All wood up here. Yeah. I'm going to make a new layer and set it to screen because I just quickly want to get light in that's not permanent. Too light. And she still can't fit through this damn door. I may have to get rid of the door altogether. When in doubt. Oops, I forgot I'm in a... Ah! Okay, that helped a little bit. When you say Dan, Rob, first, you're really good at that glaze look. I thought you were talking about my painting face because I've been super self-conscious about it. Like, I'm just not even there. But you mean glazed in terms of painting. Um, do I intentionally overshoot the value to keep it non-opaque? With the glazing technique is a great, less destructive way of um, generating detail, noise, and experimenting with value at the same time. I used it, and I mean, simultaneously I picked it up very much between digital painting and acrylics because they behave very similarly in terms of what I'm doing right now, in that you can kind of lightly go over something or even wipe it off, and it doesn't feel as permanent. Like, it's very forgiving. So in a way, I'm kind of just treating it as a lost and found thing, knowing that I can trust, and this is just through experience, but I mean, honestly, that's just the truth of it. You can trust this thing to coalesce eventually, just so long as you're making the right decisions at the right time. The glazes they'll deliver noise and visual interest and vibration of color and value just automatically because you are being kind of non-committal about it. And it makes it easier to experiment, but it comes at a price. It can be very easy to be unable to cement something down and commit. So you have to be willing to just lock it in there. When you know it's right, you gotta just seed it. And with that glazing thing, now that I'm thinking about it, like I just did with that last stroke, if you're painting lightly, you can unify value between two disparate hues and saturations, which again helps with that visual noise and vibration very much. Uh, and it just happens automatically if you paint lightly on top of something else, and you're gonna get texture, you're gonna get brush strokes and all sorts of stuff automatically. It's great. But as I said, you got to know when to dig in there. And the dig in, I think, can usually be found. Like the most opaques will happen in the lightest lights and the darkest darks from me. I don't know if that's necessarily something I can say as a hard and fast rule. Because there are times when the midtones need to be really cemented. But I'd say it's a rule of thumb, to use a old, antiquated adage. For some reason, when I'm doing color picking, it's not grabbing on occasion. I think that has to do with this GPU thing. I think I'm definitely taxing my system. So it's making it a little less smooth than I like. Yeah. Oh man, Craig Mullins totally does this glazed thing, and he does it so. It's amazing to watch. I'm always impressed seeing him paint. I like the opaque stuff myself. It looks so much more solid, and I think when it's pulled off, it it lends a realism and almost like a mystifying effect. Like, how the hell did they do that? How did they know to use that color, that value? Perfect example would be Simon Stollenhag. He paints very opaquely and with heavy textures that you can't do what I'm doing at all in his style. And as a result, when I try to paint that way, it's very hard for me. But man, does that stuff look so solid and beautiful. Hate it. It's so good. Oh, one of these days. Yeah, it's magic. Well, now I have a bigger door, so she can squeeze her rumpus through that pretty easy. I mean, it's still a squeeze, but I think I need to add or imply I will do. I'm gonna do something there. This is something I do a lot. If you're not one of my regular students or patrons, I give myself little notes of things that I'm gonna do later. But in keeping with making her feel less of a hag and more of like a good witch, a sandwich. I'm giving myself little details that will kind of keep her from feeling too evil and more kind of naturalistic, like white witchy, which is definitely what I'm after. Like, she's not somebody you would fuck with, this lady, this creature, but if you need help, this might be a person you could go to. Oh yeah, yeah. With the glazing system where you're not using full strength or opacity for the painting, um, yeah, you can get a lot of these little details. But I do. What's interesting is I do use brushes. This brush I'm using right now is a. It has a very low threshold for value. I'm just pressing that lightly, but the edges are very hard on this thing, and I use it to that same with that same kind of thought process in mind that you're talking about for opaque. See what I mean? If I get started on the environment, then I just start fixating on it. This painting might take 2 sessions. I thought I would finish, but I was a little over confident in my abilities. I do like these hard brushes for creating details like I'm doing right now. But you're right. As I do them, I'm seeing I definitely do it as a glaze. I had a teacher at Art Center who taught head painting, but he's just a fantastic painter in general, Mike Husser, and he does these amazing, like, kind of industrial gothic figures, great stuff. And when he told us what he does, because he paints alla prima in class, but then with his painting, his finished gallery work paintings, he'll he'll do the alla prima and then sand it, and then do it again, then sand it, then do it again and sand it, and do these glaze buildups. Oh my god, those paintings are just luminous. I hate him too. So good. Is everybody so good? Stop it. I don't know what I'm doing there. I don't like that at all. Everything I just did, I hate. Ah. Oops, wrong one. Let's do some more character squidging. Ha. Yep. Your art school had no painting classes. That is a travesty. Painting was such a great thing. Although we weren't allowed to paint in terms of painting classes until we'd done tons of drawing stuff. Figure drawing, head drawing. And before we even got into painting, we had to do black and white charcoal sketches that were very much, they functioned like paint. It was very interesting. But yeah, that's rough. Painting classes are the jam. I think a big part of why a lot of schools don't offer them is it's really intensive. I mean, 6, 9 hour classes, things like that. Cleanup. Just to do oil paints at Art Center, they had to have a totally different plumbing system because you can't put that shit down the drain. So, that's smaller schools. It's a lot tougher to do that kind of thing. You have to have special disposal. Different mediums can be pretty difficult to pull off. Oh, your art school experience was not good. Oh, that's a shame. Man, I hear a lot of stories like that. It really makes me sad. Um, I wish nobody ever regretted higher education. So many do, and it makes me sad. I really loved school. It was about the people, but also, I mean, having good instructors, um, it's life and death. It's huge, and all the opportunities, the networking. I'm sorry to hear that, man. On the upside, so it's not all downer. It's amazing how easy it is to find uh, extracurricular education. I mean, it's never been easier to be an autodidact than it is right now, and I've always been a pretty avid autodidact. Uh, I I learned a lot within academia, and I think it definitely has its place, and I think I'm very comfortable recommending it. I know a lot of artists that do what I do are super anti-school, and it's because they had bad experiences or because they were able to get so much online. But I do think that a lot of the stuff that's online that's of quality in terms of teaching, the reason it's there is because they had that traditional teaching experience and learned how to distill everything down. But yeah, it's never been a better time to try and teach yourself stuff. Yeah. I worry about it because it definitely, like, I worry about the ease of finding these things online, not because I want to gatekeep people out of what we do, but because it diminishes, like every time there's more videos released and then people learn from others and then they make more videos, it just diminishes the value of that knowledge. um, so it's frustrating because I paid so much for school, but I don't envy anybody learning it that way. It's pretty great. And now I'm taking advantage of it too. I'm teaching myself 3D. I'm trying to learn Blender. Oh God. And yeah, without all of that information out there, this would have just been completely impossible. So, tis what it is. I want to do something with this material. I'm not sure. I remember that I thought about this, but it's been a while since I've worked in the Claymore universe. But I'm not entirely sure if they have glass. And I don't think they do. I think glass is really special in the world. So I'm not gonna put glass in this. Oh, I made the donut. You know I made the donut. The Blender Guru donut. Everybody's got, it's a rite of passage, damn it. I got as far as making the donut, and I did the coffee cup and a plate, and I made a spoon, and then I just started immediately trying to use it in my pipeline. So I just finished the sketch for a magic card where I did the background and the base lighting in Blender. I did the background, pretty extensive background, not insane, but pretty extensive and lit it and had an AO pass, the geometry, the mask for the different geometry, and the perspective in about a day, which is too slow. It's just too slow for how I work. But you know, that's my first time, so I'll keep trying. On the upside, in regards to earlier questions about perspective and camera control and focal depth, man, Blender's very powerful for that. If you want to be able to experiment with different angles easily for your illustrations, you know, it works. There's a reason everybody uses it. That said, the real question will be when I get to the, because I've used a little bit of 3D before. Like I bought Mache's, I think it was illustration for film or something like that, concept illustration for film or character design for film, and he covered a DAZ poser and 3ds Max lighting pipeline, which was really cool and was like way ahead of its time. And I tried that. I actually used it for a couple of cards. Slowed me way down. I'm having the same issues. It slowed me way down. And I mean that when I got to the painting phase, I was so married to the 3D that I felt it really hindered my painting, and I don't like those paintings. I don't think they came out well. But now I know that that's something that happens, and I'm really hoping that I can be a little bit looser. All right, let's back out, take a look at our lighting. I'm definitely going to have to sharpen up all of the details on this background that I've introduced, but it feels more solid and like it's part of the scene. It certainly feels like it's kind of playing against the figure, which is good. It's more idyllic and stuff. But the values that I have in here, so if I go back to my Harpy, those values are much darker than what I have on her. So she's now looking out of place. Excuse me. So I have a decision to make. Either I darken her values or I lighten the values of the objects behind her. So I got to think about that. I'm thinking, let's experiment. I'm going to do a new layer and just fill it. Come on now. That didn't work at all. Goddamn Bluetooth thing. Set it to screen. Knock it back a little bit. And I can even do this with my proof, my custom black and white proof visible, to make sure that those darks aren't breaking her value key. They can hint at it, but that's accent value territory. That shouldn't be happening in big shadow shapes or anything like that. So I think that helped knock things down a little bit. Got a question here? Oh, the how Blender will turn out. Yeah, I'm curious how it'll work too. I think part of the problem is, and I can tell that this current painting that I just did the background for in Blender will be this older problem, is that when I'm working in the 3D, I'm spending so much time on it, and I know I'm wasting time. Sorry about that. I know I'm wasting time focusing on this one part when I could be painting and I could be done already. That I end up kind of trying to like cut corners and just get the perspective out of it. But really, with a tool as powerful as Blender, I should be getting details out of it. So my propensity, that how I think about it, would be I would just like get the block of that. If I were doing this, for instance, this piece here, I would get, the block of the house shape, maybe the roof too. I wouldn't even bother with the door. I'd get the block of the plant boxes, and that's it. And it would just be super rough. And I end up painting so much anyway, it's almost not worth it. So I tried to do more like secondary and tertiary details in this new one, and it still wasn't enough. So probably what I'm going to have to do to really use this in my pipeline is figure out a way to get faster, one, but put at least a day, maybe two, into the 3D, and then ultimately detail everything pretty significantly all the way up into tertiary and quaternary details. And then the painting should be easier. I mean, I've seen, like how Jama, how he does it. His paintings get real loose, but it's because he's figured out so much incredible detail with the 3D. So I gotta find my own path on that, where it works for my pipeline. But so far, it's always been a struggle, and I've never done 3D because getting it into my pipeline has been the biggest issue. I'll keep trying. We'll see. I think knocking back those darks was definitely the right choice. And it's keeping it feeling pastel-y and like idyllic, like I was talking about. I really want that. I want the background to contrast with the feel of this character. When I'm done with the character, which we're definitely not going to get to today because we're already over by 13 minutes from what I planned. I'm going to keep painting because this is fun, but I think what I'll do when I get to her is I will bring a lot of these flowers and these little details from the house. I'm going to try and mush them back and forth into each other. So, and this is all the concept art, the narrative part of it. Like that little bushel of flowers that's going to be hanging from the door, the herbs and things like that. I might also hang like a skull there and maybe some bones. I want to mix the like almost necromancer feel of her with the feel of this natural idyllic garden setting. And I think that's going to be what makes this work, is that interesting interplay between the two. I always like contrasts like that. If you look at any of my paintings, that's basically where I go with this, is kind of playing with expectations just a bit. Speaking of that glazing thing, uh, this is something I like to do a lot. Is I like to color pick throughout a painting. God damn it, stick with me here. I like to color pick throughout the painting and then use those same colors in other places, and it kind of helps unify everything. It's a technique that comes from traditional painting, where when you have a loaded brush with a bunch of paint on it, you try and use all that paint if you can. You don't want to clean the brush off, and it has this effect of unifying. It just totally works. It makes it creates color harmony really easily. So there's a lot of, if you watch my Patreon videos, you'll know that I spend a lot of time using the knowledge and wisdom that's gained in traditional media and forcing it into digital. I want to have the feel of slatted wood on this door, but I don't want to have hard slats. This isn't. There's an element of cartooniness to Granny Claymore, but I don't want it to be pure cartoon, if that makes sense. You like that, Meg? She's very shapely. Maybe I'll keep this vertical. Yeah, it is. I think, yeah, mixing that little bit of tooniness into realism is a major challenge. But I think when you get it right, it pays off. Like there's almost a more. It's that whole sort of more human than human kind of idea. Like in a way, animation can describe emotion and reaction in ways that are that feel ultra realistic, even though nothing about it is. It's all stretch and 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 pop and overreaction, but at the same time, it works. And I think with painting, at least the way I paint, it's just maybe a stylistic thing. I feel like I can generate more relatability with something that is just slightly less than real. Just a weird philosophy, I guess. Oh, bass. I remember Harry and the Hendersons. That shit made me cry so much when I was a kid. Oh my god. So good. It's funny as I'm painting this, I keep forgetting my light source, and I'm screwing up the lighting direction. That's partly because I was removing the figure, but you can't. That's no excuse. Man, those old practical teams, wow, they worked magic. Truly. Oh no, I forgot that I was doing a roundy door. Whoops. I got caught up in the shapes again. Gotta fix this. which means I got major perspective issues on this ellipse. It is pretty bad. You know, I'm going to leave that bottom edge off. Again, it's not visible. It's going to be behind the figure, but by knowing the overall shape, it helps define everything else. So I know, for instance, that this is pretty much out of perspective. Copy merged, pasting it, and put her back in. And then I can use this for scale. Fix that perspective a little bit. In Granny Claymore, the magic system in it is kind of built around color and element. So it's the visuals for it so far that I've done are all about like lots of color, and the although rare, the characters that have or are somewhat magical will be all about color. And like I haven't gotten into it too deeply. There is a scene in one of the stories, but essentially the mixing of color and pigment is like alchemy and magic in Granny Claymore. So I think having a creature like this and then having lots of color will help kind of promote that idea. And I think her, like I said, her skirt, I'm going to look up patterns later and see if I can find a good kind of traditional looking pattern that'll look great on this skirt. And continue that tradition that color is magical in the world of Granny Claymore. I don't remember who the team was that did Harry and the Hendersons and the big feats in there. Didn't they do a sequel? Wasn't there a sequel to that? Or was it just the ending that had the other big feats? Bigfootses. I can't remember. Probably mixing it up with the sequel to the Neverending Story, which hurt my heart. Oh, that's right. Okay, there was a TV series. There was something else. I knew there was like kids and stuff. But what a weird ass movie, right? I mean, you think a company would take a risk like that anymore? We're gonna make an emotional family film that's a creature feature. That's so out there. I love it. I think I want to kind of break up the order and form a little bit. Yeah, Neverending Story. The sequels were odd, but as I understand it, in some ways they were more accurate to the book, which I've only read segments of because I did a character design class with CGMA years ago, where I did character and creature designs, and I basically redesigned the Neverending Story, a couple of characters from it, for the class, and they were definitely more based on the book. Like Atreyu is green, for instance. So this is too, it still feels too dark to me. So I'm just glazing out some of it so it's more ambient occlusion. The vertical boards aren't working. They're okay here though. Okay, I really gotta fucking leave that shit alone for a little while. Okay, we need some depth. I'd say my horizon line, even though I'm this far in, I haven't really worked that out. It's probably about here. Yeah, that seems about right for her head. I'm gonna have to alter her head just a little bit to match the perspective. Kind of a mid-low angle. So that means I got a lot more to figure out back here. Again, not visible, but just knowing that it's there, I can pull from that. Huh. The figure and the house are on a different perspective. I made an oopsie, daisy. I think the horizon line on her is lower. It's okay. We're working digitally, so we can cheat. Let's do... Copy merged. Pretty much the best thing ever. Yeah, that's a bit better. Quick and dirty. So all of that was just so that I can include these little details in the background behind her arm. But by ensuring that the stuff in the distance makes sense and lives in the, that was a weird noise, and lives in the world correctly, just adds more effective realism to it. I don't want it to take I don't want it to take away anything from the foreground, and none of these details back here should be of any great importance. They should definitely be very minimal in value variation for this shot, but by having them there, it just rounds it out. Just a little extra flavor. I make one more layer and I'm going to do a haze back there. Same thing. So I'm treating the air almost exactly like I do the leaves. Just picking out little spots. I do have to be careful about having too many hard edges on it because, again, hard edges is going to draw attention back there. I want to avoid that. like painting with gouache or something. Just gotta create those details. We could even do it with a texture brush. Damn, Photoshop. All right. Anywho, hope you enjoyed that bit of background painting. I definitely focused on that a lot more than I intended to, and I think if I can keep myself from finishing this, I may just finish it anyway and start something new for next week. But yeah, we'll work on this next week unless I get fixated on it. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed hanging out. It's good to see you, gang. Take it easy, y'all. Looks like everything went through all right. Yeah, no problem. Happy to answer questions. You know, anytime. Join each Wednesday, 12 to 2 Pacific Standard, and that'll be the minimum. I'll usually probably paint a little bit more, but and if you get me chatting, God knows how long I can go. But yeah, take it easy, guys. As always, paint smart, paint sexy, and yeah, we'll see you guys on the flip side.
Hi there. I'm Izzy, a professional writer, concept artist, and illustrator. I've taught painting for a dozen years or so, on and offline. Many of your favorite illustrators and designers have studied with me or under me, and have gone on to teach in their own right. You're here because, like they did, you want to learn to paint realistically for illustration or concept art. Well, worry not. You're in the right place. Grab a seat. I want you to join me as I explain all the aspects of image making in extremely digestible and clear monthly lessons. Not through the lens of silly how to paint hair or eye demos. That shit is carnival tricks. And you're not really learning anything except an exact way to render one thing in one manner. This is painting mysticism at its worst. Watching these kinds of exploitative lessons won't help you level up with your understanding. Sure, now you can paint sparkly hair, but what if you want to paint a dragon, or figure out how to render a sea of fire, or depict a one-eyed transgender space marine dying in the vacuum of space? Painting and image making are tools of communication, and can be learned by anyone willing to put in some time. Like grammar is for language, light, color, and form literally follow a formula. Painting well is not a matter of chicken bones, zombie crackers, and the ever-dismissive concept of talent. Learning with my series, Izzy's Logic of Light and Color, will give you the tools and understanding so you can analyze light and form in reality and bring it to life in your work. Using this simple system I have distilled will help you harness your art to share your ideas as you've always intended. When we are children, we all draw in symbols. Symbols for our house, our hands, the sun, the grass, our pet lobster. As we grow into artists, we must learn to throw away symbols and begin to draw and paint what it is we actually see. And as we grow further, we learn to paint beyond what we see and what is actually there. Until finally we move beyond this and learn to trim away what is actually there so we voice only what we want. With me, you're going to have to buckle in and maybe take some pain meds, because I'm going to rip out your normal person's eyes and replace them with a painter's eyes. I'm going to restructure how you see and how you understand what you're seeing. I'm going to turn you into a painting machine. Truly, anyone can learn to paint realistically if they can both determine what they're seeing or imagining with basic and straightforward rules. Once you understand the mechanics of light, color, and form in reality, you will have the capacity to paint anything you can see or imagine realistically. After that, the real fun begins. Here are some of the ways you can join me and master the logic of light and color. The very first lesson of my series is totally free on my YouTube channel. In that lesson, I give you the 3 primary rules of light that are the very foundation of painting and understanding light itself. If you do nothing else to make your painting mastery easier, at least watch this amazing little lesson. It will do more for your basic understanding of light than just about any tutorial you can find. When you're ready to get deeper and you feel like you have those first rules figured out, allow me to utterly blow your mind with the next episodes available on Gumroad and ArtStation. As we go deeper into the rules underlying the logic of light and color, I carefully and simply explain important and interesting elements. From beginner to pro, there is an amazing amount of information available. Each concept has been distilled into the clearest explanation you're likely to find anywhere. Like episode 2, where we cover the atmospheric effect and how that relates to light, scale, and distance of objects in reality, and how to render it. Or episode 3, where I hand over the ultimate key to controlling value in your paintings. Episodes 5 through 8 are all about rendering materials. Want to understand the logic behind rendering metal, leather, hair, transparency, damn near anything. I even cover the logic behind painting special effects like fire, neon, or lightsabers in later episodes. The lessons just get deeper and more detailed as I build on the foundations covered in preceding episodes. The 10th gives you the most important rule of composition you'll ever learn to keep your images interesting. The next few episodes cover important painting techniques like my edge control ninjutsu or simplification with the large to small system. We dip a toe in color theory, devote a few episodes to finishing full-blown illustrations utilizing the techniques we've learned so far. Some episodes, like the lighting game or Advanced Exercises 1, the shirt, present cheap, valuable, and practical exercises to give you explosive growth in your development. Episodes 22 through 25 cover painting and illustration, just like I do for Magic the Gathering, from assignment and inception to signing the painting at the end. Each one is full of tips, knowledge, everything to make working as an illustrator easier. Did you enjoy learning how to paint basic materials? Metal, wood, and such? I got 3 whole episodes devoted to the intricate logic behind painting different kinds of skin. After that, more lessons devoted to pumping life into your portraits and original methods for accurately drawing faces out of your head. From fundamentals to photo bashing, Gumroad and ArtStation have every lesson I create available for purchase a la carte. But here's an even better way to learn with me. Stay current with my latest lessons on Patreon for the lowest price available. Monthly support gets my student that month's lesson, a critique or paint over of their finished work, a discount code for 25% off the entire Gumroad archive, and access to the Logic of Light and Color Discord community, where we plan future lessons, share knowledge, and learn together as a team. The absolute best method is to join my Patreon classroom at the Student Plus tier, where you'll get everything I just mentioned and a free episode from the archive every month to accelerate your mastery at your own pace. You've decided to take control of your painting and master Izzy's logic of light and color. Now it's up to you to choose the path that's best for you. I'll see you on the flip side. Paint smart, paint sexy. Hi there.